Hi, I'm Marty Grisani, and this is the Marty Grisani Show. As a full-time real estate investor and business owner, I have a real fascination of finding the key principles for business success and personal development. This show is a reflection of my personal mission to find out what truly makes somebody successful in business and in life. Join us weekly as I interview high performers, CEOs, business owners, and athletes and uncover why and how they reach the levels that they've attained to become world class. We will find tools and tactics that they've used to reach those levels. If you're the type of person who is not satisfied with average and you have a hunger for learning that will never cease, this show is for you. Welcome to the show.
I actually forgot my AirPods, but not a big deal.
No, put them on.
No, they're in my vehicle. I'm not going out to grab them.
All right, no worries. All right, guys. Well, welcome back to the show. Today, I am very excited because I have none other than Danté Belmonte. All right, now this guy is an absolute G. He's the founder of the Make Money Make Sense podcast. He's a managing partner of Victory Capital. He is the one thing that I can say, Danté, that I'm really excited to talk to you about is just how obsessed you are.
Yeah,
you're a freak.
Sure. Yeah, it's true.
You're nuts, and I love it. So I'm gonna have you introduce yourself in a little bit, but I gotta say one thing. All right, I was listening to now Danté has over 100 plus episodes of his podcast, so he's this will be a lot of fun. We'll be able to flow pretty good here, but I'll say one thing. I think this is true. And I think this is true for you. And I think this is true for a lot of people. I think your life would have been fucked up if you went to college.
And I have a really good backstory with a therapist about that I can totally touch on. My parents literally, so I'll just touch on it real quick. So
let's do it.
When I was in, I want to say it was my senior year of high school or like freshman year, I didn't want to go to college. And my parents were super concerned. And they literally had me go see a therapist and to convince me that I needed to go to college. And after like 3 or 4 meetings, the dude looked me like straight in the eyes and he's like, listen, man, he's like, I don't know how I'm going to tell your parents that you're not going to college.
Yeah.
And like that was that. And, after that, they were concerned for me and I totally get it. They just wanted to care for me. But I think now I've totally showed them that, and they're gung ho for me. And they're some of my biggest fans. So definitely, I did 1 semester at school. I told my parents I'd do a gap semester. After that gap semester, I read the syllabus for the first day of classes, and I dropped out right on the spot.
No way.
Yeah, so
I love it. Well, here's the thing. I mean, so many people went to college. See, here's what I think would have happened with you, right? Here's just my thesis for you. Mm-hmm. And I again, because I know the type of person you are, that I can tell because you're so obsessed and focused. Like you would have done it, right? Like if you had different parents, let's say, or if you had different kind of situation, like you would have done it, got a business degree, worked at a job, and like done really well, right? You're a really driven guy, but like you never would have started this of what you're doing now until maybe like later down the line. Like you would have been a guy who's like, all right, I got to get to that next level at that company, and then the next level. And then you've been like a vice president with kids. And then you got this house you got to pay for. So you got to stay in the job. And just, I think so many people go down that route, even the people that are sick like us, like they're obsessed, they're focused, they're driven, but they go that route of maybe they get that degree. And so they got to use it, typically a business degree, and they got to use it just to say, hey, yeah, I did it. And they get that, entry level job, and then they just want to be a champion, and they just want success. And it's not necessarily that they like what they do. They just want to be successful in what they do. And so successful is, all right, show me the formula of to get to the next step in this company, because that's what I'm going to do, right? Because I'm not going to just stay in fucking 101. I'm going to keep going up. And I think that's what happens. And I'm so glad you didn't, because now you're 24, 23, 24. You just turned 24 not too long ago. And you're doing probably stuff that you probably never would imagine. None of your friends are probably even close to even thinking about some of this stuff. Like you can't be hanging around with your friends talking about this stuff. Do they have any clue what you do?
So, a lot of my friends are older than me. They're in their late 20s, early 30s. A lot of them are business owners, entrepreneurs. So we kind of mesh in that standpoint. They may not do real estate, but they're entrepreneurs. And so we talk about this kind of stuff. And Marty, what you just said, like getting your degree, when you get your degree, you're just moving the needle, just a degree. You change the thermostat from 72 to 73, you
Ooh,
don't
love
notice it.
that.
You
Love
get a
that.
degree, and that's all you're doing is just moving the needle, just a hint, and no one's noticing. And that's really what a degree is. Don't get me wrong. There are people out there that do need a degree. They need to go to college if they're going to be a professor in the medical field, a lawyer, an attorney. Many different things need that training, that background, but
Sure.
not everything does. And we're in a society where we're trained that you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you do the 9 to 5, you climb the corporate ladder, and that's not always the case for everyone.
Oh God, man, that's so good. What'd you say again? The get a degree just moves a degree. What was that?
Correct. Like I said, you move your thermostat from 72 to 73, you don't notice it. You get a degree, you don't notice it. It doesn't change anything for you.
I love it, buddy. I love it. No, so where do you think this comes from? Where do you think this obsession comes from? Again, because guys, this is a guy who he's got he's got his own broker. Or do you have your own brokerage?
Worked for a brokerage, own private equity firm.
Oh, owns a private equity firm. He's a managing partner. He's got multifamily units in is it North Carolina?
Yeah, North Carolina is our primary state that we operate in.
Yeah, he's the inventor of the Chick-fil-A method, which we'll get into a second. Which I'm a big fan of, in the three-prong attack of the Chick-fil-A method. We'll get to that in a second. But why? Because why are you obsessed and focused? Like why? So you start, you're obviously you get a job, you're working in you're doing a bunch of stuff. You the worst job you worked at as a car wash, but you're probably doing what I think a lot of guys and girls who like get into business entrepreneurship is through sales, right? You're working commission, so
Most
you're kind of
definitely.
working for yourself, right?
You eat what you kill, essentially, and it's the
Yeah.
harder you work, the more you make. And that's kind of how I was always driven. So I hated school. I hated being told what to do. I hated leadership, or for the most part, so to speak, and not really leadership, more authority, I should say. And so when I got out of school, it wasn't really, I didn't want to go to college, so I got a job at a dealership. And I figured, cars are pretty expensive. So you sell one of those, you get a pretty decent commission. You sell a few cars a week, you could take down $1,000, $1,200 paycheck. And that's great when you're 18 years old. So I was doing that, and I was really doing a really, really good job at that. And to the point where my manager, he said, you can work whenever you want. You can come and go as long as you want, as long as you keep your numbers up. So I was out of a dealership of 150 salespeople, I was the only one that didn't work Saturdays because I got to choose my days off. And in tandem with that, I was like, what's the next thing I can sell that's larger that you get paid based off of the sales? And I said, that's houses. And so I was getting my license at the dealership while I was working. And then I started going to show houses during the day. And my manager's like, yeah, just, go show the house and make sure you're back for your appointments. He didn't care. And he was awesome. And he's actually a good friend, investor, and one of my clients, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that is cool.
And
Full circle.
Exactly. It really, and I can go all day with those relationships, but really just kind of trying to figure out what's next. And it's led me to the next thing. And now that I'm in the brokerage / investment side of things, it's full circle. I sell multifamily and single families in central New York. And some of those investors, they'll buy a duplex, but then they'll give us $50,000 for our private investments. And then they'll go buy a triplex and they'll give us another 50,000. And just it all comes full circle. I do meetups for my clients that are buying and selling real estate, but that also has our investors at the meetups as well. So it's kind of killing two birds with one stone with everything that I'm doing right now. Same thing with the podcast, same thing with the meetups, and everything that I do.
Yeah, I love that. Your first guest was AJ Osborne, which is just probably not the easiest guy to get now but like
Back in the day it was. Now you can barely text the dude, get a reply,
I love it. Let me just start off my podcast with just AJ freaking Osborne. This guy's probably the number one self-storage, owner, manager, teacher. But anyway, I love what you're doing, and it's very inspiring, and it should be inspiring to everybody listening. Again, the guy's 24, but he put in already. It feels like, because if you started at, right out of high school and you start selling at an early age, and you kind of have an idea and you have a mindset of like, I want to be as successful as possible. And because my thing with me, Danté, and I'm sure it's probably with you, is one of my biggest drivers is like a fear of failure, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Is that for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like every day, I was just having a conversation with my wife about something, and she's just like, I don't want you to do all this stuff and then kind of freak out if you can't obtain it or get there or hit that goal, essentially, is what this conversation translated to. And it's very true. I'm very results driven, and that fear to fail, I never want to go back. And sometimes I do things a little more than I should, just so I'm kind of setting the bar for myself. And I know, like, it's kind of like burning the boats. There's no going back. Once you're there, you have to make things happen. And that's kind of my mentality with a lot of different things that I do.
Do you think like you're in because sometimes I feel like this is me. Do you think like sometimes like you're in like a crisis? Like you gotta get to that next step. Like it's like there's like
Every
an urgency all the time.
every day, like I feel like I'm in a crisis. Not even like I feel like I always need to do the next thing, and whatever I do has to be bigger than the last thing.
Hmm.
And this is also not a benefit to me. It probably hurts my personality a little bit, but I always think what I have is not enough, and that's
Hmm.
probably not a good thing. That's probably one of my biggest cons is what I think I have now is not enough, and I kind of need more or go farther, which can help you with goal setting and whatnot. But there has to be a limit when, hey, when's enough. But I think that's also encouraged me to go fast and far quickly, because I'm just
Yeah.
trying to constantly exceed.
Yeah, I think you're the type of guy who is although I know you know, I can tell you're very organized and analytical, but you're also like and tell me if I'm wrong here, but you're kind of like a ready, fire, aim. Do you feel that way?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It depends on the situation, but yeah,
Sure.
super organized, also kind of a control freak sometimes, which getting a partner has really helped me hone back on that, because it's had me, entrust another individual with tasks and things to do, and not just being the decision maker on everything and trying to take control of everything. I think that was one of my biggest flaws, was just trying to do everything, touch everything, be in control of everything. And you can't really grow that way. There's only so much you can do. You have a certain bandwidth. So that's why people start to have maybe assistants or virtual assistants or admins, and, a partner that really helps grow the business and working on the business rather than in the business.
Well, thank God you learned that sooner than later on in life, like because geez, like you just said it, you're going to be able to explode in growth, and you have, which is again a testament to you and your partner. So what does that look like? So Victory Capital, what does it look like? I know it. So you have a partner. You're both managing partners, and then is one guy in charge of acquisition and management? Is one guy like just pounding the pavement? Like is one person raising capital? Like what does your day to day look like with that?
Yeah, definitely. So great question. So just touch on my partner. His name's DJ Smith. So we met in Syracuse where he lived. He lives in Charlotte now. He's lived there for 7 years. He was a chemical engineer. He actually left that position, that role, about 4 years back, and he's full time in real estate with myself. And so really, I wanted to scale. He wanted to get into real estate more hands on, not just passively. And so we joined forces. And really, kind of how the funnel works is I'm acquisition. So I've got the broker relationships. I do all the underwriting. I've got this crazy 10 tab spreadsheet that I programmed for 2, 3 years now, exactly to our liking. And I'll go through all the acquisitions, any property, any underwriting. I'm kind of like the first line of defense. Once that I like that property, I put in an LOI. We're putting in, probably 50 LOIs just to get one accepted to do one
Yeah.
deal. It's especially down in the Southeast, it's very competitive. Once that LOI goes in, we get it accepted. Typically that's when we'll tour the property. So we're not really touring the property prior to LOI, just because it's tough to tour all those properties we're putting offers in.
Yep.
So that's when I call up DJ. Hey, here's the property. Here's the down low. Here's the address. Here's who you're meeting. Go there. Give me a call on the way. I'll give you the breakdown of what's the property going on. Like, I'll send him. He won't even know what the name of the property is. Get in the car. I'll give him all, like, the quick notes, what's going on, what's the business plan, who the broker's meeting with, who the broker's married to, how many kids they have, all that relational stuff too. And, I keep track of all of it.
Love
And
it.
if that meets our initial sniff test, or that test for the property, once we walk it physically, we'll go back to the underwriting. We'll ramp up the CapEx budget. I'll also have about 5 to 10 comps in that area I'll have him run to while he's viewing the property. After that, he'll go hit all the comps, and then we'll hop on a Zoom call, really tighten up the underwriting. And then if we're still good and they accept our LOI, or at this point it's already accepted, we'll go to purchase and sale agreement. So this is kind of when I hand the baton off to DJ. He'll get the purchase and sale agreement. He'll start working with the attorneys. They'll get the contract in order. On the backside, I'll be getting all the debt in place. So any mortgage or private lending we have on the deal, where he's going to start working on the syndication documents with our attorneys. So he's really good with working with attorneys. So he works with our attorneys at that point. On the back end, there's also 15 different things going on, but this is just a quick overview. I'm also getting all the investor summary marketing material ready, and in tandem with him doing all the documents, all the legal documents for the investors. Then I'm sending out mailers to the investors, emails letting them know the new investment opportunity, and then we're calling our short list of investors too. We'll review everything together. We'll kind of bring everything together. So it's all like all one puzzle put together now that we've taken his pieces, my pieces, and we'll do the capital raise together. And then we do the asset management together as well. So, I head up acquisitions. I kind of tee it up to him. I put the ball on the tee and he knocks it out of the park essentially. And then I go and grab it and bring it to the next hole. And we kind of just keep doing the same thing. We've got a pretty good system in place. We're still working on, just really honing in on that. But we're getting to the point where we're starting to get overwhelmed. So we're going to start to hire on some help here, hopefully some more admin work that can take care of, a lot of the paperwork and legal aspect of our business.
Well, I think one of the things that you said that it struck me because it makes sense is, you're a guy that's in Syracuse, born and raised in this area, right? You're in Fayetteville, Manlius. Is it Manlius or Manlius?
Fayetteville, Manlius. That's the area, the school area I went to.
Yeah, that's it. The school area. It's a really good area. But I went to Lemoyne, so I kind of know the area a little bit.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
It's funny. What I'm getting at is you picked the area of North Carolina, and it makes sense because in one of the things that I heard you say in a previous interview podcast was, for you're a location guy.
Most
So
definitely.
does Syracuse, upstate New York, obviously there's not a ton of competition from some of the other REITs and the funds out there up here, but are you just like, nah, not for me up here? Or what is it? I mean, if the right deal came along, you would, but or is it just not your cup of tea up here?
There's kind of a few different ways to approach that, and my approach on that. So I think the upstate New York market is great for cash flow. I think it's a phenomenal market. I have dozens. I have clients from the country of Australia that invest in Syracuse, believe it or not. Like there's really good returns to be had here. But for me, I need to see three things: job growth, income growth, population growth. And my partner and I did a lot of research with that to figure out where those areas are. Syracuse, Central New York didn't check the box, unfortunately. And something you got to think about as well is age of structures, landlord tenant laws, and then migration. So a lot of people are migrating down to the Southeast. Here's a silly one that people don't really think about. Air conditioning wasn't really commercialized and brought into the residential market until like the 70s and 80s. So therefore, those lower states that were smoking hot all summer long, they didn't really start to get that big population growth until the 70s and 80s, when people could withstand being down there because you could put air conditioning in the homes, which is kind of something funny to think about, but
That's
it's
an aha
true.
moment. That's cool.
And
Never
because
thought
of that, a lot of the buildings are built in that time period, starting in the 70s and 80s. You're not going to get the early 1900 builds like we have up here. It's not a thing. Like, I know it sounds silly, but look at the original 13 colonies, where those are. All those areas are where those like 1800, early 1900 buildings are, because that's where settlement was for us. And as you start to, the United States starts to grow in population and growth and migration, you start to go to these southern tier areas where taxes aren't as bad and the cost of living isn't as high, and the weather's nicer and the landlord tenant laws are more friendly. And there's a lot of reasons. And so, our oldest building we own is 1986.
Yeah, that's
and
crazy.
That's almost considered old to me. I won't look at anything past 1980s in the Southeast. I really won't. And location is big. When a broker sends me a deal, I don't care about the numbers. I could go a week without seeing the numbers to decide if I want the property, because I'm going to look at, again, the age. I'm going to look at what's surrounding. Is it a growth area? Is it a low income area, high income area? I'm going to look for things like Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, Five Guys, Lowe's, Home Depot.
Yeah.
Publix.
So go in your Chick-fil-A method, because I know there's the third prong is just for fun, but I know there's a couple reasons why you look for Chick-fil-A's, or you're looking for those national you know,
They do the research. They know where the growth is.
yeah,
They're going to spend these millions of dollars to invest in their businesses, and they're going to make sure they're in successful places. That's the places we want to be around, because there's also growth in those areas. Like our property we just closed on last week had 2 Chick-fil-A's in a 2-mile radius. That's like a huge plus for me. Things I don't like seeing are pawn shops, used car dealerships, vacant commercial spaces, or just rundown commercial spaces. Because it's not going to look good. It's usually a sign of not too much growth in that area. So those are all things I can look at. I mean, I get sent deals, off market deals from brokers all the time, and I can immediately just look. I'm like, what's the address? And they'll give me the address. I don't even need to sign a CA to see the financials, and I'll just say, hey, so and so, appreciate you thinking of us. It doesn't work, and here's why. And I always give feedback, because the brokers really appreciate that. And it'll also show them that, okay, this guy, he means business. He knows what he's looking for. He's not just spitballing looking for any property. And that criteria does get kind of niched down a little bit more, but that's just from a 30,000 feet view.
yeah, and I think you can speak to them a little bit better because you are one, right? I mean,
Mhm.
that's nice. I mean, obviously, if someone's saying no to your deal, you'd want to know why. So just kind of
Exactly.
giving them a reason why. A lot of people don't do that at all. I think probably 90% don't do that. So, being that one person that does, it's funny because in this business, at least for me, there is like, hey, be a human to somebody, right? Like,
Yep. Yep.
by the way, these people have feelings, and it's
Yeah.
like, hey, and it's like, hey, maybe this person could potentially pay more, and I know that, but like I like this guy, so I'm going to give this guy the first shot. I mean that
Right.
shit happens. Does that not happen?
It most definitely does. And you're also
Right.
staying top of mind. So the more communication I can have with that broker, the more top of mind I'm going to be. So when the deal does come by their desk, I'll either be at the top of their inbox already, top of their text, or they just got off a call with me, or they're already thinking about me and like, oh, well, here's Dante, let me just send him that deal right there.
Yeah, you're a freak. I love it. One of the other things that you do that I think is really cool, and it's something that I've done, but I didn't think about it like the way you thought of it. But strategic lending. Go into that a little bit because I think it's very interesting what you and your partner did, and you continually do to network and at the same time make some money.
Yeah. So a big thing right now with real estate is mentorships and paid for mentorships, and they can get expensive, $10,000, $20,000 per person. And, going back to that, I don't like uh, learning in school, so why would I pay for it to do it in this capacity as well? Really what we did was we lent out to syndicators. We would invest in their deals, but we found syndicators that were in the markets we like already, so we could build relationships with them. And so they weren't huge. We're not lending to Grant Cardone here because we won't be able to talk to him directly. We're lending with some smaller shop guys that maybe have 500 to 1,000 units in their portfolio. And we did this because one, we can get in their ear. So, benefit us here, benefit them here. We can get in their ear, they get an investment. We get a mentorship for free. They get to sign on our loans and get the KP fee for that. And so, everyone's winning from that. There's no loss there at all. And because of that, we're building some great partnerships. And one individual in particular that signed on our loans has even brought some investors to us. And
That's awesome.
it all goes full circle. Everyone's got to win in these situations.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's that give, right? You guys give
Mhm.
some capital, some of the money from your commissions into a deal, and oh, by the way, it's going to make money anyways on the back
Yep.
end, but at the same time, they're going to give you access to their circle. And also, again, you're in Syracuse, so you're not in some of these areas in North Carolina, South Carolina, some of these areas in the Southeast. They're going to be able to talk to you about the contractors they use, the property managers they use. I mean, this is
Exactly.
that's worth more than the 50 60K that you might be, or 100K that you might be putting in deals, because long term those connections, those are millions of dollars worth of connections. So yeah, I
Right.
love that, especially if you're able to find some KPs to also sign in some of your deals, because those you need those guys. You need those guys and
Exactly.
girls.
Yep. Early on, you definitely need them.
You need those guys and girls. So that's cool. So I think one of the things that you're doing that I really appreciate too is that you're not just okay with multifamily. Obviously, you're 24 and you're going to be able to grow in this business and continue to build up your portfolio. Multifamily we both agree that it's a great direction industry, but also I really like something that's changed my opinion, especially with these landlord laws here in New York, is the triple net lease commercial stuff.
Yep.
I,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? I know that's something that you're kind of interested in pivoting towards. I mean, is that something that is like hey, at the end of the day, that's where I want to be? Or would you kind of get out of multifamily to go into that direction? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I mean, the goal is to continue to do the syndications, build the firm essentially, and with my earnings outside of that, buy some triple net properties in cash, do refinances out on them, and then get that money lent back out. Because the triple net space is a very interesting space. It's not traditional like any other asset, and that's the great thing about the podcast. I want to learn about triple net. So I had some triple net brokers get on the podcast with me and teach me all about it. I grabbed some books. There's not a lot of learning material out there, but I grabbed some books and really learned on that. I even put some offers on some local Starbucks here, some local Chase banks. So, nothing that came to fruition, but we offer where we're at comfortably and where we are at in these properties. But I would love to add those to the portfolio because they are extremely passive. They're very safe investments. They don't take up a lot of effort or management time. They're always going to have value for the most point as well. And they're 20, 30-year leases. So kind of talk about set it and forget it for the most part. If you do your due diligence right and grab the correct triple net tenants, you can't be going to get, again, a pawn shop, something like that in your
Yeah,
space.
you don't want another vape shop in your
Exactly. There's enough vape shops out there, and
yeah,
plus that it kind of brings down the clientele for the rest
100%.
of that area. So like if you own a strip mall, it shows you're kind of desperate. You want to get that space filled, and the kind of clientele that's going to be there is going to sprinkle into the other stores there as well. So to answer your question though, triple net leases are phenomenal. They're a great investment, but you do have to be very low leveraged in those to make sense and to meet the debt service coverage ratio. You have to be about 50 to 60% leveraged in those deals. So that's why you'll notice a lot of people will purchase those in cash, typically doing a 1031 exchange because it's a quick, easy way to do it. They're always going to cash flow at cash. It's easy for the 1031. There's not as much competition. There's way more triple net properties for sale out there than there are multifamily. So it's easy to find something. And then to reaccess that funds, you'll just do a cash out refinance. So therefore you can touch that 1031 exchange. It's tax free and go put in another investment. And you're just growing that investment.
Don't you think it's interesting, like as you are in this business and in this industry, like you go, maybe like in the beginning for me, because like I would look at something and be like, how would somebody want to, why would anybody want to buy a five cap? Like, why would anybody want to do that? But as you like,
Right.
as you grow up and you see like, hey, a lot of people have a lot of money
Yeah.
and
Oh
they
yeah.
need to put it into something that's going to spit off a safe returns, a Starbucks, a Chick-fil-A, those kinds of things that it's going to be a no-brainer. And now being in management, and we own and manage over 60 properties, units in Rochester, and we're partners on a 50 unit, blah, blah, blah. But, we're in it kind of day to day. We manage our own shit. And I'm like, man, you can see how people can get burned out. We've been doing it since
Oh yeah.
2015,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, now I get why someone would want a 1031 apartment or all their portfolio of rentals into something safe and easy like a 5-6 cap, and just spit me off a couple bucks. I'm good. I don't necessarily need the money, but I definitely wanted to get something that was just going to give me that return. I just think in the beginning I wasn't thinking clearly, but now it's starting to make more sense as I've
Well,
been
and the biggest
maturing.
thing too is it's spitting off a return. It's nothing crazy. You're getting the tax benefits, but also with those triple net leases, there's built-in rent increases. So what the rent is going to be in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and
Right.
therefore that's going to increase the property value based off the cap rate. So it's going to be worth more down the line. And if there's only a year or two left on the lease, that's not going to help the value of the property because there's more risk if the tenant moves out. But if you can, get something with a new tenant in there, and then maybe there's 10 years left, 10 years left on the lease and you get rid of it, there's still value to be had there for someone. I mean, 10 years is a really strong hold period. And you look at the owners of who owns these properties, and they're historically wealthy individuals because they have capital, they know how to preserve it, and they know how to play the game. And that's the 1031, the cash out refinance, the depreciation, the cash flow game is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and it's interesting to kind of see this game kind of play out as I stay in this business longer and longer. It's some of those really good properties, they don't trade very often because these guys don't want to sell them. These guys and girls don't want to sell
Correct.
this stuff, so it's very interesting to see because like you hear like the top of the food chain go, I'll never sell.
Right.
Right? I'll
Yep.
never sell. You hear them say, I'll never sell. And so you kind of got to wait for things to either unfortunately, as people pass away, those things kind of come up because the estate
Yep,
doesn't
family
really.
gets it.
Yeah, and
Well,
it.
and to answer that question, like I'll never sell. And you asked me earlier, why not upstate? Why not Syracuse? Why North Carolina? So the other thing is like you can only touch stuff within the city limits of Syracuse. Anything in the suburbs, like the FM, the Fayetteville, Manlius you're talking about, and like the Baldwinsville or the Camillus or the
Yeah.
Liverpool, those properties never come for sale because they're
Mhm.
newer construction, they're high income, high quality areas, and the individuals that own them want to hold on to them forever. And if they want to sell them, they want an outrageous price that really doesn't make sense. So that's another reason that, I'm not able to get my hands on a lot of the assets here, nor am I confident in them.
And you are, and you probably, they probably know of you, right? And you've knocked on their doors, and that's
Yeah.
the other thing. You're building up your brand in the area where, when the time does come, you'll look at it. I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
If something
Oh
comes
yeah.
across your desk, it's not that you're not going to look at it. No, that's awesome. I think that it's really interesting what you've done, and I think people are excited about real estate. And that's why I put this show together, is because I don't think a lot of people know that you know anybody can really do it, and also you can be any age. I mean, 24 or 23. I mean, that's crazy. I love it, and I love that you thought big early on. Was there something that maybe you were buying one? Did you buy like a rental, like a single family or a double, and you're like, I just
Oh
want to
yeah.
go bigger? Yeah.
I had a bunch of stuff. So like the house I'm in right now, I bought for 40,000. I burned it. I wasn't supposed to live in it, but that's just how it ended up happening. That was one of the deals. And I owned a bunch of duplexes and I was starting to buy up a whole street. I ended up selling off, what I owned on the street. But my goal was to scale. Like I was just like, oh, I'll literally buy this whole street. I'll rehab the whole thing. I'll get the values high. And that was the plan. And I started looking at the numbers and I was like, this is going to take forever to scale. It's just, it may not sound like it, but if you do it, you'll understand it's just as much work to do all the paperwork and get to closing for a 2 unit as it is a 20 unit,
Yeah.
as a 20 unit, as it is for a 200 unit. Yeah, there might be some other items that just take a little bit longer, but at the end of the day, it's the same paperwork. You're just adding zeros onto the end of it. And I was just, kind of telling myself, I was like, this is going to be impossible to scale. And so that's when I really decided, let's go big, which really going big right now is still considered small in the space I'm in, and continue to scale. And so one thing that my partner and I are really keen on right now is we won't do a smaller deal than we've done in the past. So every deal we do has to be bigger.
Like it.
And with the exception that it's like a screaming deal that you literally cannot pass up. But, getting those today is still very difficult.
Yeah. So when you're approaching some of these larger buildings, obviously they're well. I thought, did I see one of them was off market that you just closed on, or are they all on market because it's through brokers, or is it kind of like in
It's a
between?
mix.
It's a
Yeah, it's
mix.
kind of in
Yeah.
the middle. It's like some of them are, direct to my email. They don't make it through the internet. Some of
Got
them
it.
never make it to the broker website. Sometimes
Got
they
it.
just make it to the broker's website, but not like LoopNet or anything like that. There's
Got
no
it.
MLS for those either.
Okay. Okay. And
Yeah.
then are you able to, because a lot of people in the Upstate New York Real Estate Investor Group, they're always talking about, how do I find a seller finance deal? I tell them, and maybe you have experience here, that you kind of just got to ask, right? Not
Yeah.
everybody
Oh yeah.
wants, right? I mean, have you had any experience with some of the larger multifamily with seller finance? Like, have you come across that? But when you're raising with syndication, can you do seller finance? I'm not even sure.
Yeah, you most definitely can.
Okay.
It's really, it's a lot harder to come by on those larger properties because it's not like the mom and pop owners where you can convince and kind of get them to do the seller finance on some of these larger assets. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It definitely does. And there's a good book on that. That is Creative Cash. Bill Ham, he wrote a great book on that, talking about seller finance and master lease options. And it's definitely possible. It doesn't happen very often. And to be honest, sometimes some of the debt we can get is so favorable that I'd rather just put fresh debt on it and take the property, on its own. But that's not to say you can't get a seller finance deal at 3% interest only for 5 years and then it balloons out in 10. Like you can do that. Like I had a client I sold the building to in downtown Syracuse, and they got 1 year interest only. I think it was like 3 or 3.25% on a $600,000 building with 2% down. Like they
Wow.
got a smoking deal, but that's because they asked.
Yeah,
And
right.
I think asking is the biggest thing. you're going to get 99 no's, but the one yes might make the difference between a good deal and a bad deal. Kind of like my first private investor. So pre-syndication, just, this guy I knew because his daughter was in my friend group, didn't see him for like 4 or 5 years. I just called him up, saw how he was doing. And I just said, hey, so-and-so, I remember when I came over your house like 5 years ago, you were telling me about, you lent money to a family member because they were flipping houses. They said, I've got a project. I'm short on funds on what I personally need. If you'd like to invest in it, let me know. Here's what I can do for you. And the guy just sent me an email the next day and he's like, hey, everything looks good. Why don't you come pick up the check at my office at the front desk and have your name on it? I was like, at the time, I think I was 21 or 20, early 20s though. And the dude just, didn't even need anything, just handed me over a check and just said, hey, if you can get it back by that time with that interest, you said, we got a deal. And we did just that. And it was like, I was kind of like blown away because all I did was ask. And that's what you have to do.
Guys, if you're listening to that rewind that, because that's huge. You got to ask people. But I think the number one thing is, Danté remembered something because he's listening in sales. Listening is the most important part. And you're listening, hearing what people are doing, oh yeah, I've heard this guy's lending here, or this guy lent for that and this. And then he asked, and what's the worst they're going to say? Well, I can tell you what, people are going to just be going, like people that are in business, they're high level people that are making money, they'll just like that you ask. And I think like maybe like 90% of people would just, if they had it, they'll just give it to you anyway and just be like, good for you. Just go. Like I can see that you're hungry and you want to do it and you're going to do it. Obviously they're going to want to take a quick gander at the deal, but no, I think people need to ask more. But I think what people don't do enough is say what they do. And I think having the podcast, putting it out on social media, these are tough things at 21 to do. Like I'm doing them now at 32, about to be 33 in a couple of days. But it was really hard for me to kind of get past that mental block of going like, man, who am I? And here was the worst thing that I did. When other people did it, I go, man, who are they to think blah, 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 right? And that's like that's actually the worst thing you can do. But the second worst thing you can do is think that, why would I be able to do this or that, right? So it does take a little bit of time. But why the hell did you have the gumption and the cojones to just go and do it at 21 to start a podcast when you were just kind of trying to figure it out?
Yeah, I mean,
did you just not give a shit?
It was kind of like, I wanted to talk to like high earners as well, like high level individuals, high earners, very successful. And, again, coming back to that mentorship thing, people wanted a pretty penny for it. And so I was like, how can I talk to these guys for free, record it so I can go listen back to it. They get their name out and then people get to listen to them to learn from them as well. I was like, oh, that sounds like a podcast. And so that's when I put the podcast out, and it was over 2 years ago now. So like there was real estate podcasts out there, but it wasn't as many as there are now. So it was a lot, I want to say, easier. You'll always be able to get someone on your podcast to talk. Anyone wants to do that. You and I got to make this great connection. I get to hopefully get heard by some of your listeners, and your listeners will hopefully get a good show. And then, you'll probably come on my show, and it'll all go full circle, and everyone benefits from that. And that's what I wanted to do up front, was I wanted to learn from these people. I wanted to get them on the phone or get them on the podcast and talk to them for an hour for free, record it, listen back to it. And then they could benefit because people could hear about them and what they're doing. And hopefully get some free advertising out there for themselves. So I say, hey, let's just give it a try. What's the worst thing that happens? Someone says no. And, started off AJ Osborne, Richard Garcia, Chris Salerno, like 3 pretty big hitters right out of the gate. And that just kind of sent us running.
So astute. Like what a thought to do that. And I think there's so many people. Here's what I think, Danté. I think, yes, I think it's certainly, there's a ton of different real estate and mindset and different business podcasts. But the crazy thing is there's still a lot of really successful people, like in their business, in real estate, or in just business in general, who need to have a podcast. Those are the guys and girls I want to hear from. So, right. It's like I think although I think it's also like a game of like, who's willing to keep going? You did 100 episodes. And I think for me, this is episode I think this is episode 3. And so for me, I'm thinking, hey, I'm not even going to look at this thing. I'm not even going to judge this thing until
Right.
I'm 100.
Exactly.
I'm 100 in.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because like, who cares? You
Yeah.
know, it's really content. I want because I chop this stuff up. I put it on Instagram. I put it on Facebook, and I'll tell you, and I don't even have to tell you this, but how many people have reached out because they saw or heard you say something, or maybe through your Instagram or through part of a clip, and they go, "Hey, I want to work with you, and I want to give you money."
Right. Truthfully, over 100. Truthfully, and that's just it. And it's
Love it.
an arm of the marketing and getting your name out there and getting seen and getting in front of people. Because the nice thing about the podcast is, someone that wants to work with me, they'll want to take a call with me. I'll send it to my calendar. They'll book a call. In the meantime, here's my podcast. These 3 episodes really kind of go with what you're trying to do. Go listen to those. And that helps with my time management as well, because I can now talk to people without talking to them. I can still be in
Right.
front of them and educate them without actually being in front of them and educating with them. Because if I showed you my calendar, you'd be like, I don't know how you do all that. And it'd be 10 times worse if I didn't have the podcast or something to talk to these people. And like, a guy called me, he wanted to work with me. And I said, okay, listen to episode 101 and 73. That's one of my local clients two of my local clients have totally kicked butt and are trying to doing what you want to do. And so they were able to go back, listen to those. They're like, yeah, you had some great points in there. You really helped explain some things. And I didn't have to not that I don't want to take the time to tell these people, teach these people, and build relationships with them. I still do, but it helps me to free up a little bit more of my time, and it gives them something to go back to and listen to a few times as well. So it really helps out. And I was doing an episode every week for over 2 years, and that's how I hit the 100 episodes. And then I had a daughter, and that definitely tapered back a lot of my time. And it was best thing in the world, but some of the content I put out did kind of take a step back because life got in the way, which is fine. That's the whole reason why I'm doing all this stuff, is so I can have a better life for myself and my family. But it's definitely hard to get to that 100 episode, 100 podcast episode. It's an uphill battle.
Well, guys, if you, it's a no-brainer to listen to him, because it gets better and better every episode. I really believe that. And again, that's Make Money Make Sense by Danté Belmonte. He has deals regularly that do you have to be accredited to invest?
No. So right now we're taking sophisticated and non-accredited and accredited. It has to be a pre-existing relationship. So if that's someone that wants to get involved, reach out to me.
And that's one of the things that's exciting about what Danté does, is he has deals that are in the areas that a lot of us upstate New Yorkers want to get into, just to even if it's just to go down there to look at your property that you might be an LP on. It's interesting. Guys, again, listen to his podcast, check him out, check out Victory Capital. I'm sure he's got a newsletter. I'm sure he's got like an email blast you could probably connect to see what's coming down the line. Strategic lending is amazing. That's one of the things maybe you could do with Danté. Maybe you could give him some money and learn a little bit about it, but maybe not. You might not want to have to, he's going to make the decisions, but maybe he'll let you in on a couple of his secrets. And at the same time, the Chick-fil-A method, which is real quick, is he likes them because that's where he knows that those national juggernauts are going to do the research. He doesn't have to do it, but he knows that a lot of his tenants might be employees there, and of course, but my favorite part was he likes to eat there, which I do too. So Danté, thanks for coming on the show, buddy. I really appreciate you. And thanks for everything, buddy. It was great.
Marty, thank you so much. I love what you're doing. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, brother. All right, guys, have a great day.
Thank you for tuning into the Marty Grisani Show. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, leave us an honest rating and review. If you're on Spotify, make sure you follow us for weekly episodes. Thanks for tuning in.